to go. Good morning. Welcome to First Church Unitarian in Littleton. My name is Cindy Malley, and my pronouns are she and her. You might recognize me from some of my other FCU roles, such as junior deacon, which kind of puts me up here every so often, or hospitality coordinator, the one who is constantly asking you to please sign up to usher. Or if you follow us on Instagram, I'm the person whose face was peeking out from behind this pulpit last Sunday. I don't know who's responsible for the church Instagram, but I have my suspicions. But whoever is doing it, it's probably the most lighthearted social media we have, so you should follow it. Besides welcoming you, it is First Church Unitarian Littleton, right? And then you have to do it on the Instagram app. I only go on Instagram to check up on this church and my kiddos' Instagram, so that's it. Besides welcoming you, I'm supposed to lift up something for your attention, and today, that is going to be our upcoming stewardship event, which is March 12th, which is a Sunday. It's from 2 to 4. It's going to be virtually only, and it's called Stew for Stewardship. An email went out on Friday with details about how you can order all of the yummy food for that day. So save your date, March 12th. Check your email. It went out on Friday. I'd also like to remind you to please read Community Matters for all the other important information, and to also please silence your phones. And now, welcome to church.
In the morning, I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial. I lay down the book and go to my well for water, and lo, there I meet the servant of the Brahman, priest of Brahma and Vishnu and Indra, who still sits in his temple on the Ganges reading the Vedas, or dwells at the root of a tree with his crust and water jug. I meet his servant come to draw water for his master, and our buckets, as it were, grate together in the same well. The pure Walden water is mingled with the sacred water of the Ganges. The words of Henry David Thoreau. Let us worship. I don't know who's lighting our chalice today. Do we? Oh, okay. I will invite Natalie to come up and light our chalice. And as Natalie lights the chalice, please join with me in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Good morning. I join with Cindy in welcoming you here to First Church Unitarian in Littleton, Massachusetts. And thankfully this morning I'm actually here in person in the sanctuary myself. So I welcome all of you who are here in the sanctuary, but I welcome all of you also who are with us virtually on Zoom or YouTube. Welcome. It's great to have you with us. If you are here with us for the first time, either in person or online, we hope that you will check us out a little bit more thoroughly, and if you're here in person, follow us to the vestry after the service for fellowship and coffee. If you're online and you haven't already done so, I invite you to go to our website, fculittle.org, and there you can find lots of information about us and find ways to contact us as well, if you wish. So I always like to remind us, when I remember anyway, that we invite the sounds of children and babies, so don't worry if children and babies make noises, because we all make noises, and it's okay. We're just happy that we're all here. So our opening hymn is one of my favorites, short and sweet. It's 389, gathered here in the gray hymnal, and Malley will lead us through it. We usually do it as a round, all right? So I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and the words will also be on the screens. Thank you. Very nice. So our Director of Religious Education, Thea Shapiro, has a well-deserved day off today, but our children and youth will be in good hands with Martha and Monica, and hopefully in okay hands with me right now for our time for all ages, which is, of course, for all of us. I have something a little different today, not a picture book per se, but a few pictures. It's a story that I will paraphrase. It was often told by somebody named Swami Vivekananda. It's quite a name, right? Swami Vivekananda. He was a Hindu, which is a religion that comes out of India. He was a Hindu sort of saint or religious leader. And he came here to the United States in 1893 and spoke in Chicago at the World's Religious Parliament of World Religions, I should say. And he told this story that I'm going to paraphrase for you. And I share it. He actually came a few decades after the Transcendentalists, the group of people I'll be talking to the adults about a little bit later. But I share this story in part because the Transcendentalists, paved the way for him to come here and be so well accepted, but in part because he so well summarizes the ideas from the deepest philosophy of Hinduism. So, we'll begin the story. This first picture. There was a lioness who was walking around and feeling hungry, and she came upon some sheep. So, as is the way in nature, she leapt at the sheep, looking for a meal. Next picture. So she leapt at them, trying to get her meal. But instead, next picture, instead of getting her meal, she instantly gave birth to a cute little baby lion cub. These things happen. But now is the sadder part, because sometimes in nature, childbirth can be dangerous, and as it turns out, through complications of this, she did in fact die. And the little lion cub was there without a lion parent. So, next slide. The lion cub grew up among the sheep and thought of itself as a sheep, thought it was a sheep, didn't know any different. That's what it grew up with. And so it would go around grazing with them and, hanging out with them and buying and doing all the sheep things. Next slide. And it did this even into young adulthood. So you had this young adult, fully grown lion thinking it was a sheep. Next picture. One day, on the right, you see an older lion came by and saw this curious sight of this lion acting like a sheep. And the lion asked, "Why are you hanging out? What's going on?" And the younger adult lion had no idea what he was talking about. He was a sheep. So next picture. So the older lion took the younger adult lion over to a pond and told him to look into the pond at his reflection and see if he looked like a sheep or if he looked like the older adult lion. So he looked in the pond and saw his reflection, and sure enough, he sure looked like a lion. Next picture. So the old adult lion said, "Okay, now roar for me like a lion." And the young adult roared like a lion. "Rah!" And lived the rest of its life as a lion. Next slide. So, on the right there is Swami Vivekananda. If you want to see what he looked like, that's around 1900-ish. What do you think the moral of the story is? Yeah. Anybody can be anything if they put their mind to it. I like that. Yeah, that's in there, absolutely. Yeah. Any other moral we get from the story? Know thyself. What was that? Know thyself. All parts of yourself. Yeah, very good. That's another good moral from the story. Absolutely. One more thought. Don't look in the pond. Yeah, looking in the pond, it's kind of like taking the red pill from the Matrix. Perhaps not letting other people define who you are. I like that too. Well, all of those are valid lessons. Swami Vivekananda was telling the story as sort of a spiritual story, with the lion and the sheep standing for something else, as is often the case in stories. And his thought was that we all go through this world and this life spiritually thinking that we're sheep, essentially, so to speak, that we're just little old us, very small creatures in the universe, and if we believe in God, that God is this huge thing, and. But in fact, the spiritual truth is that in spite of what you might think, you're a spiritual lion. You are mighty. You are spiritually powerful, and you just don't know it yet. That is the moral of the story from Swami Vivekananda. So thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate your attention. And now we get to hear the anthem from the choir before you go downstairs.
Goodness. All seems beautiful to me.
You have done such good to me. I have done such thing to me. I would do the same to you.
Hello, I'm Kris Ersland. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm here to talk about neighborhood supper. And I probably don't have to say very much at all because most of you are quite familiar with the supper. It's been going on since 1991. We cook a meal every Tuesday night at the Congregational Church. It's a place for a good warm meal and a lot of good community. First Church Unitarian cooks on the third Tuesday of each month. And we're so glad, and the biggest thing right now is this year we've gone back to being in person, and we're filling the dining hall. There's usually 40 to 50 people every week coming for a meal. We have about 14 people each time we cook. We have about 14 volunteers, starting with the grocery shopping, going all the way through to putting the last chairs away at the end of the night. And mostly what I want to tell you is that, the grocery shopping is the thing that's changed the most. The bills have gotten higher. So anything that you're willing to donate today would be really welcome. And also your brownies. We always look for brownie bakers. We're cooking this Tuesday. So your gifts will now be graciously accepted, and we really appreciate all that you can do. Thank you.
Please join with me in the words of our community response. We are grateful for the opportunity to give and serve, and grateful for the gifts we have received. May this affirm the ministries of our church community, both within and beyond these walls. Most weeks, we share an important time together we call the Candles of Caring. This is a chance to feel again our connections to one another and to that which we consider holy. If you have an important joy or concern that you would like to share with this gathered beloved community, I invite you in the sanctuary to raise your hand high enough that we can see it, and we'll come around to you with a microphone and light a candle for you up front. And please let us know your name and briefly let us know how we might direct our thoughts or prayers or healing wishes. If you are with us on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand under the reactions area. Are there any candles of caring this morning? Amen and blessed be. Some of you might remember a sermon I preached called 21st Century Transcendentalism just this past fall. And I shared then that I've recently come to appreciate more clearly than ever before that present-day Unitarian Universalism is in many ways an updated Transcendentalism. So just a quick reminder or summary for those of you who are less familiar with Transcendentalism. Transcendentalism was a literary and philosophical movement in the mid-19th century in New England, especially in and around Concord, not very far from us here in Littleton at all. And the peak of Transcendentalism was from about 1835 to 1855. Ralph Waldo Emerson was the central figure of the movement, and much of the movement was, in the beginning, a reaction to and against the Unitarianism of that day, as well as certain social trends that were happening like industrialism and conformity and so on. Most Transcendentalists, by far the majority, were Unitarians. Many of them were ordained Unitarian ministers. Some, like Henry David Thoreau, were Unitarian laypersons, or in the case of Thoreau, a former Unitarian layperson. He did resign his membership from First Parish with one sentence. I resign my membership, basically. That's the gist of it. But most Transcendentalists did remain in the church. Emerson was himself a Unitarian minister from a long line of Unitarian ministers. He did leave parish ministry, but he continued to attend the First Parish Unitarian congregation in Concord, and continued to offer pulpit supply in other Unitarian churches, in addition to his writing and other lecturing. The Transcendentalists were like the far, far fringe of the Protestant Reformation, even beyond where the Unitarians of that time had landed. So yes, the Unitarians of that time in the 19th century had already decided they didn't believe in the doctrine of the Trinity. They already were trying to leave Calvinism behind and other creeds behind. So Unitarianism of that era was pretty liberal and a fairly open style of Christianity. But the Transcendentalists wanted to go even farther. To the Transcendentalists, one of the biggest problems with 19th century Unitarianism was that it didn't speak to what was happening in the here and now, that it continued to focus on what had happened almost 2 millennia before in the life of Jesus. And though the Transcendentalists respected the Christian Bible, they didn't want to be limited to the Hebrew Scriptures or the New Testament. The Transcendentalists were influenced by all sorts of different thinkers, ancient Greek philosophers, modern-day European philosophers like Kant, All sorts of thinkers influenced them. But to today's point, they were early readers of Eastern religious scriptures when they became available in translation here. They were probably the first serious readers of Eastern scriptures in North America, or at least many people will say that. The Eastern scriptures that they were able to get their hands on included some Buddhist scriptures, Sufi, Taoist, Confucian writings, but nothing really imprinted itself more into their thinking and their writing than Vedanta, the Vedantic texts of Hinduism. This is especially true for Emerson and Thoreau, and today, in part for the sake of time, I will focus on those two. It's really hard to summarize exactly what the Transcendentalists believed, or even what the name Transcendentalists meant. It was a name given to them by the public, not one they chose for themselves. The best I can come up with is that theirs was a shared sensibility that transcended cognitive understanding. It was a sensibility that put moral law, or what some would call God's law or divine law, above the laws of humanity. So it was about the transcendent law of the divine. And central to the Transcendentalist belief was what Emerson called self-reliance. What Emerson meant by this was rely on your own experience, rely on your own intuition. Emerson and other Transcendentalists thought that each person has the ability to use their intuition to learn spiritual and religious truths, all on their own. This was, in the mid-19th century, a pretty radical idea, and for many people, it's still a radical idea, even today. To me, this transcendental spirit is very much alive in the first of the 6 sources of our living tradition today, the direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. So that is the first of our 6 sources for modern Unitarian Universalism, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder. The Transcendentalists, particularly Emerson and Thoreau, were impressed by this Vedanta, the wisdom tradition of Hinduism, that goes back thousands of years. It's believed to be the oldest sacred scriptures in the world are the Vedas. In particular, they leaned heavily into the Upanishads, which are really summaries of the Vedas, and the Bhagavad Gita. None of the Transcendentalists offered anything like a systematic theology like some Christian scholars and theologians do. They didn't spell out their ideas in any kind of formal way. But in this way, Transcendentalism is a bit like Vedanta. If you've ever read anything in the Vedas, it presents deep theological ideas, but in a form more like poetry than systematic theology. And the Transcendentalists, like the ancient Vedantists, were as much poet as theologian, probably more poet than theologian. The central theological idea of Vedanta is thou art that, or in Sanskrit, tat tvam asi. Thou art that, you are that. And I've preached before on this in different contexts, but briefly, the idea is that Brahman, which is best translated as cosmic oneness or the ultimate reality, or what many call God or the divine, the idea is that this Brahman resides in everything, that the divine is found within absolutely everything and certainly within humans. And humans are said to have Atman within them, which the closest translation would be soul or spiritual essence. And according to Vedanta, this soul, this Atman, is Brahman. It is the divine. So in other words, you are divine. Thou art that. One of the Upanishads, the Mandukya Upanishad, says, all this truly is Brahman, but Brahman is Atman within you. You are that. In the Bhagavad Gita, a young warrior prince named Arjuna doesn't want to go into battle and fight. Arjuna's charioteer turns out to be Lord Krishna, one of the avatars of God, disguised as a charioteer. And Krishna reveals the truth to Arjuna, that everything around, all he sees, right, even there right on the battlefield, all of it are just incarnations, different manifestations of ultimate reality called Brahman. And so battle maybe isn't as bad as it seems, because death isn't what it seems, because it's all divine. It is that, just as you are that. Death, life, all you see, all is God. Thoreau struggled with that as much as he loved the Bhagavad Gita, because of course he was a man of peace. But it does teach a certain truth, which I'll get to a little more later. Vedanta also teaches that the core of each human, or the heart of the divine, is pure bliss. But most of us never experience it because we're focused on and distracted by our bodies and our thoughts and all of our attachments in this world. A great rishi, or a Hindu saint, in the bliss of meditation, is in a no-mind place. The rishi can get to this blissful divine unity, or this blissful awareness and experience of divine oneness, because they can get past their body and their mind and their attachments. This is why so many rishis have Ananda at the end of their names, like Vivekananda and Yogananda, because Ananda in Sanskrit means bliss or joy. So bliss and joy are always there for those who know how to get beyond the illusion and to the spiritual depth. To hearken back to today's Time for All Ages, most of us go through life as spiritual sheep, never recognizing the deeper good news that we are spiritual lions, synonymous with divine ultimate reality. Some of you might remember from a sermon I did on Hinduism a few years back, so perhaps not, but perhaps you know this from other sources, that Hinduism offers many paths to God, or ways to commune with the divine. The word yoga actually means union. And so there are many different types of yoga that can help you connect with or have unity with the divine, with your own divine essence. What most of us in the West called yoga is really hatha yoga, which is a particular kinetic form of bodily postures. But the four primary or key yogas, the four basic paths to knowing the divine, are karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, and raja yoga. Karma yoga is the path of action, or really the path of being one through our actions and our work in the world. So the Bhagavad Gita's central teaching is about karma yoga, doing what you are meant to do as selfless action and as a path to knowing the divine. Jnana yoga is the path of knowledge, the path to knowing the divine through acquiring knowledge, whether reading or through other real life experiences. Bhakti yoga is the path of devotion, the path to the divine through love and devotion, like singing songs of love to the divine, a bit like praise worship, I suppose. And finally, Raja yoga is the path to knowing the divine through discipline, meaning the discipline of the mind and body, so that you can control it. And Hatha yoga, what we just call yoga, the kind of yoga you do on mats, is a subset of Raja yoga. But the primary tool of Raja yoga is meditation. Emerson and Thoreau were 19th century yogis. Each of them did some bits and pieces of these 4 different types of yoga to some extent, but I would simplify today to say that Emerson tended toward jnana yoga, the path of knowledge, through reading and writing and lecturing and really trying to explain his ideas. And I would similarly simplify today to say that Thoreau tended toward Raja Yoga, or the yoga of discipline, trying to live in aesthetic, simple conditions with a good dose of meditation, some of it in the form of walking meditation, which he called sauntering. Emerson did more to write down and try to explain some concepts of his thinking. No, as I say, it wasn't systematic theology, but it was still often a pretty overt exposition. One of his most famous essays from 1841 is The Oversoul, and many of his words there and conclusions are straight out of Vedanta, even though he doesn't necessarily name it as such. He talks about the mistake many of us make thinking that our thoughts and our conscious ego is our true self, when our true self is so much more than that. He sees our true self, or our soul, as an underlying unity of all things, very much like the whole Brahman, Atman idea, but instead using the term oversoul. He writes of the oversoul as the ultimate unity. He wrote, "Within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. And this deep power in which we exist, and whose beatitude is all accessible to us, is not only self-sufficing and perfect in every hour, but the act of seeing and the thing seen, the seer and the spectacle, the subject and the object are one." In the essay Nature, Emerson writes, "Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed in blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God." He takes a sort of different angle in the essay Self-Reliance, but it still hints at insights from Vedanta. He wants us to look within and have profound trust in our own intuition. He writes, "To believe your own thought, to believe that what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men, that is genius. Speak your latent conviction, and it shall be in the universal sense, for the inmost in due time becomes the outmost." And I'll give just one more example from Emerson this morning. He wrote in his journal, "In all my lectures, I have taught one doctrine, namely, the infinitude of the private man." Indeed, that was the central gospel, the core good news for each of us. It's the same as the good news of Vedanta. You are that, or to quote Walt Whitman, also inspired by the Vedanta and a fellow traveler with the Transcendentalists, you contain multitudes. You are divine. Where Emerson did his jnana yoga and wrote all this good news with this inspiration from the Vedanta, Henry David Thoreau largely lived it. Luckily for us, he also did a bit of writing about his living and yogic experiments and experiences. He treasured the Bhagavad Gita perhaps even more than Emerson, and he even kept it with him as one of very few possessions in his cabin, his tiny cabin at Walden Pond. There, Thoreau lived in the spirit of the ascetics at the Ganges River, making the modest but lovely Walden Pond in Concord his own special waters for union with the divine and deep contemplation on the oneness of all things. Thoreau was more apt than Emerson to name his Vedanic inspirations overtly in his writings. So in Walden, Thoreau writes, "The sweltering inhabitants of Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta drink at my well. In the morning, I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, since whose composition years of the gods have elapsed, and in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial. I lay down the book and go to my well for water, and lo, there I meet the servant of the Brahmin, the priest who still sits in his temple on the Ganges reading the Vedas. I meet his servant and come to draw water for his master, and our buckets, as it were, grate together in the same well. The pure Walden water is mingled with the sacred water of the Ganges," he writes. In Walden, Thoreau also writes that men esteem truth remote in the outskirts of the system, behind the farthest star, before Adam and after the last man. In eternity, there is indeed something true and sublime, but all these times and places and occasions are now and here. God himself culminates in the present moment and will never be more divine in the lapse of all the ages. And we are enabled to apprehend at all what is sublime and noble only by the perpetual instilling and drenching of the reality that surrounds us. So where Emerson tended to look very much within, Thoreau perhaps more overtly often experienced the divine in nature. We can also see Thoreau's experiential Raja Yoga tendencies as compared to Emerson's Jnana Yoga of knowledge tendencies, when Thoreau writes in his journal, "My desire for knowledge is intermittent, but my desire to commune with the spirit of the universe, to be intoxicated even with the fumes, call it, of that divine nectar, is perennial and constant." So for the sake of time today, I'm going to stop with those excerpts and examples. And I want you to know, to realize, to recognize that modern Unitarian Universalism carries Eastern religious sensibilities deep within, though often in the trappings of Puritan heritage. And in that too, we're something like Emerson and Thoreau and the Transcendentalists. If modern Unitarian Universalism is often syncretic, know that we come to this naturally through our transcendental heritage. It is very much in our larger transcendentalist flavored Unitarian Universalist tradition to seek the light within. You just have to get through your own inner monologue, your own monkey mind to experience it. You have to get through and beyond your own outer aches and pains of your body to experience it. You have to get past a focus on your attachments to experience it. If we listen deeply to the voices of nature and to our inner voice preaching, perhaps we'll find there deep inside is the voice of the cosmos, the voice of the universe, a glimpse of the ultimate mystery. To hear that is bliss. To hear that is to know that you are that. May we know this wisdom. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing hymn today is number 92 in the Gray Hymnal, Mysterious Presence, Source of All, and the words will also be on the screens. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit. For our closing words, I invite you, if it's okay with the person next to you, to hold hands or touch elbows or shoulders or feet or whatever works for you. Or if you wish to simply put your hand out and feel the energy between us and with those with us virtually as well. We dwell in deep spiritual waters. We all come from the same source. Everything you see, everything you experience is made from the same star stuff. Indeed, you are the mystery that was at the beginning of the universe. You are the mystery of those tiny particles expanding from the Big Bang, evolving into everything that we can experience today, and creating beautiful, amazing, conscious thought in your own divine self. You are a spiritual lion. You are that. Blessed be, and amen.